welcome everyone. Thank you all for sparing us your very valuable lunch break time today on what is an amazingly sunny day. My name is Rolly de Somres, and I'm a sustainability advocate, and I'm the founder and co-lead of the Chamber of Commerce's Sustainable Business Initiative. And I'm also a huge fan of the work of our speakers today, who've been consistently and hardworkingly driving the conversation around really important subjects around the future of our island's well-being and the global situation. So today is all about being future-looking. We need to look more forward as an island. We need to be thinking more about the future. This is about being strategic. It's about being driven, which is fortunate because that's what the digital greenhouse is all about. This is about being sustainable, and sustainable in kind of every meaning of that word. Sustainable from a business perspective, sustainable from an environmental perspective, and again, being forward-looking about moving away from the economy we have at the moment. Guernsey has committed to being net zero. So we have a target in place. Most of the countries around the world also have a target in place as well. And so it's not like this is a niche thing. It's something that we're very much part of a larger group. The world is changing what it's doing. And I think it's fair to say that businesses and individuals, we all need to fundamentally change to get to net zero. And we're going to hear today about what some of those changes might be in the Guernsey context. 32% of Guernsey's carbon footprint, so the stuff we have right now, comes from the areas we're going to be talking about today. It comes from our energy, it comes from our buildings, it comes from those areas. And so these are, if we're going to get to net zero, that's a third of the problem. So it's definitely something we need to do. It's second only to transport in our to-do list of things we need to sort out. And it's probably one where the route is clearer. We're going to hear today about the things that we can do, very real steps to take action, which apply to both businesses and to individuals. So what I want you to take away is how to do it, why we should do it. And I'd also like you to take away that we really must act. And even if we don't have all the data we need, we must act on the data we do have. So I'd like to introduce you now to Paul and Jack from Renew, who have written this vision and have spent a lot of time and effort in putting the detail in to share with all of you. So I think a round of applause for them before they come up to welcome them to the stage.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Rollo. Welcome. So here we go. Zero energy buildings. What's it all about? One of the things that we want to do, we aim to forge relationships between the digital, the green finance and the renewable energy communities. And of course, I think other people are very important, like architects and others. But there's an immense crossover to be had between these industries. And we'd like to get those relationships up and running as soon as possible. You know, there's quite an urgency in the air. You know, now is the time to galvanize and to push the button on the mass deployment of renewables. Now is the time to play our hand in reversing climate change, providing energy security, and even halting poverty. It's time to engage from the front line that we sit on. We have lofty aims, but why shouldn't anybody agree with these things, especially today? World peace, the end to poverty, reverse biodiversity loss, and not just stop climate change, but actually reverse it and turn back the damage incurred and look forward to a cleaner, better future. With energy derived from natural resources, not from resources that fund misdemeanor and pollute our atmosphere, waters and land, our goal is to provide energy abundance for all, energy for everyone. But the interesting thing is, it's not just a superabundance of energy, because if you have a superabundance of energy, you've also got a superabundance of IoT devices and sensors and all sorts of things like that. Now, for those who don't know what an IoT device is, it's an Internet of Things. It's a little box that sits connected to the internet. So in the case of solar systems, that might mean inverters and all sorts of other types of boxes, gateways, which basically collect data from all these different areas and send it to somewhere for analysis by somebody. For example, over here, that's actually an IoT device collecting a lot of information from a site up in Torterville. And that is real-time data that we're seeing there, where there's a cooling system operating and there's a solar thermal system operating. From that, we can gain statistics. But at the moment, the way that we gain statistics from that system is not really good enough. You know, we can't do that much with it. So part of the objective here is to find people that can help us, you know, build code machines that can do it better. So we've got a digital wish list, in actual fact. And this is how I came to Digital Greenhouse, through the digital wish list, because I came to see the very lovely people here and say, look, I've got these ideas about apps and different bits and bobs. You know, a zero building app, which is what we're going to talk about today, a fast track planning portal, system monitoring and control, which we've dubbed integrated service solution technology, of which that is a sort of first step towards. Automating a whole renewable energy business. We want to become a digital business because that's the only way that, you know, businesses are going to move forward. We want to rapidly roll out renewables. We need to do that quickly, and we need help to do that. You can't just do that on spreadsheets anymore. And you know, we use computers, but it's not an integral part of our business, and we want it to be. I'll explain what smart grid as part of grid as a service is a bit later on. But the thing about this, it's applicable to real-time situations here and now in Guernsey and across the world, because anything that we can create here is portable, expandable, and scalable globally, because the whole planet has yet to catch up. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of really good stuff. And we deal with a lot of different machines sitting in different places, and you know, they don't all talk to each other. We've got, you know, 6 apps just to look at different bits and pieces. Whereas that one, we can do several things at the same time, in terms of we've only got one app, but the data that it gains and presents isn't as good as we like it to be. By the way, Loxone is not, I didn't make Loxone, that's an Austrian home automation system, but you can program it to how you want it to behave. So why are renewables data driven? It's because there's already millions of, if not, I don't know, maybe trillions of devices, IoT devices on the internet, gathering data from everything from light bulbs to solar systems, you know, to your television and all kinds of things. It's happening now, but the amount of devices that's going to go online is going to be even more in the future. And so the interesting thing about this, it creates a lot of data. And as it creates data, it means you can gather that data, process it, and you can do something very useful with it. And, you know, places in the home and the business will act as first-line collectors, the way I see it, because if you shove everything up to the cloud, that means you've got a bottleneck, either delivering it to the cloud or accessing it from the cloud or in the cloud itself. So by having first-line machines that process it in the beginning, then you only get the important stuff out of there. So from the edge to the cloud, machine intelligence can segregate all this stuff. AI can help human operators, and we'll need extraordinarily good cyber protection, because as we know, there are people out there in the world that are trying to do things in cyber ways, not just on the ground. So what use is all this data? We can optimize systems, we can learn how well we're doing, we can increase the efficiency of systems, we can monitor potential breakdowns. This system here, if it goes wrong, it sends me an email, and then I can look at it, do something about it remotely possibly, and then if I have to, actually go to site. I mean, in Torterville, I live down at Boset, so I don't want to go to Torterville every day to fix something. Similarly, we've got a system in Sark that's been extraordinarily beneficial because it saved a lot of time and energy. But from government policy to renewable energy companies, system operators, homeowners, there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do with this data. Now, zero energy building, the most important thing about this to understand in the beginning, before I talk a little bit more about the whole shebang, is that we're talking about, it makes things very simple because you're just comparing your consumption to your generation, and then you get an output. It's that simple. At the moment, we've got very complex building regulations which don't actually encompass heating systems. The insulation factors are very good, but they don't encompass heating, they don't encompass solar. So if you look at it in a different way and say, well, I want to produce a house which is going to have a 10 out of 10 score, which means I'm going to be producing as much energy as I'm consuming, well, then that gives you flexibility in design as well. And if you've got an oil boiler or a gas boiler, you score -1, because you can't offset. You can offset the oil, but you can't power it directly from actual renewables. So what is renewable energy? A lot of people know these days what it is, but just to spell it out a little bit, it's the sun, the wind, the tides, the waves, the earth, the moon. That's what gives our wonderful renewable energy that we can use. And the most important thing about this, to understand about renewable energy devices, is that renewable energy technology is not a fuel, it's a technology. Whereas oil, gas, etc., you take that out of the ground, you burn it, get rid of it, it causes pollution, it's gone. But with technology that uses the sun and uses the wind and the tides, it's always working. So it's just, well, it's a good idea, isn't it? So just to clarify what a renewable energy device is, it's machinery or equipment that only uses renewable energy and sustainably sourced energy to produce or convert or transfer energy from one place to another. And typically, on a micro renewable home or business situation, we're talking about primarily at the moment heat pumps, storage, and solar photovoltaics, but there are other types of technologies which we'll come to. And then looking at the bailiwick of Guernsey, through the cable link, we are connected to the world grid, the Euro grid, I should say, at the moment, because the world grid's a future thing. And we can use offshore energy to help power the continents if we wanted to. So just a little introduction. I think today everybody knows what a solar panel is. And I'd hate to ask, does anybody not know what a solar panel is, and put your hand up, so we won't go and do that question. But it's interesting to see that the different types of systems that we've been involved in here, from roof mount systems to integrated systems, to flat roofs to pitch roofs. And just to throw that one in, just to excite people into solar fields, because if you've got a spare bit of land, it's a good way to produce a lot of energy. Heat pumps, I think, again, most people today know what a heat pump is, especially in the last 6 months, because since the gas started to go up, we've had more and more inquiries for heat pumps than we ever had. But it's interesting to note that because of the way the island is, we want to make sure our heat pumps are as quiet as possible, because what we don't want is buzzing heat pumps as you walk around on your quiet afternoon walk on a winter Sunday afternoon. And ground source heat pumps, I think they're going to have a bit of a comeback because they are inherently super quiet. Storage, everybody knows about storage now, but there's lots of different types of storage coming on the market. The most popular one at the moment, of course, is lithium, and also still the old-fashioned lead acid batteries. But there are such things as flow batteries, supercapacitors, saltwater batteries, and liquid metal, and all sorts of things. And it's just, they're all scalable. If you look at the top right there, that's one cell, and that unit there is made up of many one cells. And the same for that, that's made of many capacitors. And inside there are many hundreds of lithium ion batteries. So whether you've got one, 10,000 or a million, you can scale it very, very easily. And at the larger scale, grid scale level, it's very likely within a few years we're going to see hydrogen being produced here and used, particularly in aircraft. Thermal storage is coming online. Gravity storage. That gravity storage is actually just a huge building full of bricks which get raised up when you've got lots of energy, and when you don't have any energy, it just drops down. So you can store that for a long time. You can store that energy forever and then let it go when you want it. And then this one's very interesting here, a system that works by rusting and unrusting itself to store energy. So it's a very, very cheap way of storing power. And then just to make sure we cover everything, we've got the old-fashioned, solar thermal flat plate collectors, which is really the kind of first solar panels we saw around everywhere. And then you may or may not see so many evacuated tubes. And then there's a new style of evacuated tube, which has got a solar panel, electric panel in it, as well as heat. So just to differentiate for those who might go, well, what do you mean? So the first panels we saw produce electricity, that's solar photovoltaic or PV, and then solar thermal, or we call it ST sometimes, produces heat. And this is a combination of the two. And then there's a few other interesting technologies over there, but I don't see small scale wind as being a big winner on the island, but I do see large scale wind as a big winner. This just shows how that's put together. By the way, if you're not taking this all in, afterwards talk to Jack and he'll give you, we'll send the presentation out to you so you can study it at home and share it. So just to go to the larger scale stuff, this is all real technology that's here today that works. This is not kind of pretend. These have been deployed in different places in the world. That's an English company, that's a French company. This one's fairly new, also based in England. These are also English. And the orbital turbine is kind of a front runner as well. But the interesting thing is that this sits underneath the water. Those sit underneath the water. That sits above the water, and then the wings go underneath the water. But the top of the machine will be seen. So it's quite interesting because the sets of tidal energy pathways, if you like, are going to be the ones that are very big and sit underneath the water, and the ones that are slightly smaller and sit above the water. And they'll be used for different things in different places for different reasons. And then also we can put these type of turbines offshore, sort of, some 20 kilometers away, and they'll be probably on floating platforms. And then when you get to hydrogen transport, where you can power anything with hydrogen as well as batteries, and a lot of these machines are actually battery systems, but are powered by hydrogen. And so everything we've seen all needs monitoring, control, servicing, maintaining, tweaking, updating. And so really, this is why we see the digital professions so key to delivering to the success of renewables. As we sit here today, there's millions of people out there coding stuff to make stuff work. Without it, we wouldn't get anywhere. So firstly, the importance of energy itself, which goes back to zero energy buildings. So carbon is easy, swipe left, no to carbon. It's that simple. We don't have to talk about it any more than that. Don't want it. Except And then nuclear is easy, swipe that left. We don't want that either, because it's not clean. It's not clean energy. If we don't have clean energy, we're not interested because we want clean energy. So swipe right, renewables are all, they're all out and renewables are in. But then it gets difficult because we see customers every day and they go, well, I've got this house, I want to put a battery system in and I've got room for 3 kilowatts of solar panels. And we go, well, you're just about going to run your house. If you want to put batteries in as well, you're going to need more panels to make that sensible. And then the question is, well, how long will my batteries last? Can I run my house all night? What if it's a power cut? All these things are very important. So it's not until you know your energy consumption that you know how much to conserve, generate and store to create the balance to reduce costs to yourself and to society. And if you talk in terms of carbon or money, you don't know. A tariff does not tell you how effective you are in energy terms. A carbon offset does not tell you how many units of electrical power you need to power your home or your country. So global and even local energy policy needs to be reformed to be fit for purpose, and zero energy buildings are part of that contemporary path. And it's not something that's nice to do, we have to do it. So the interesting thing is, so the money doesn't matter actually, except can we afford to do it? And how do we make the solution the most economic and cost efficient way so we can afford it at a personal level and at a social level? So we talk to people and they go, oh yeah, £10,000 for that. Well, I can afford that. And what's that going to do? 50% of my energy costs. Great. So that's the way that it works. It's not very often that they'll ask. In fact, I don't think anybody's ever asked me how much carbon they'll save, because they just know that that's going to happen. And then the other problem with talking just about carbon is that some bright spark will go, well, we'll install some nuclear power stations then, won't we? That will solve the carbon problem. But as I say, that's not clean, so that's not very useful. However, here's an interesting set of slides to demonstrate sort of where we're going, what we should be doing. So at the moment, there's what I call a misappropriation of precious resources. If what we're doing today, we did 20 years ago, if it was even possible, then we wouldn't be in the mess we are in with the Russian situation, because all that money that we've been spending out on oil and gas has gone into pockets of either him or, the Middle East, and all sorts of different regimes which have used that money for not good purposes. So at the moment, most of the energy that's used in society for manufacturing, industrial, commercial, etc., on the manufacturing side, to do with energy, we're manufacturing fossil fuel cars, aircraft, oil boilers and gas boilers, and just some renewables. And here's the thing. We need to start manufacturing more of that to transfer ourselves to an electric society as soon as possible, and not manufacture oil-fired boilers or gas-fired boilers. The amount of energy that goes into that compared to into what you need is about the same. You can see here, we've got more renewables going in because we've increased our manufacture of renewables. So then, as we manufacture more of that stuff that we need, wind and tidal turbines, solar panels, we have a renewable energy feedback loop, because then we've got even more renewables. So we start to manufacture everything using renewable energy. So the more we manufacture renewable energy, the more the move to RE is reinforced. So we start to close down the dark age fuels. So eventually we can say goodbye to them. But I'll just go back to here, because at the moment, we absolutely need to burn these fuels and use these nuclear power stations now in order to create that new future, which sounds uncomfortable to environmentalists, but we have to. And that's why we have an energy crisis at the moment, because the world leaders recognize that. They go, how are we going to get across the energy transition without oil, gas, coal, and nuclear? We can't. It's absolutely impossible, because we don't have enough renewables made today to make renewables. It's uncomfortable. But as we go on, we will be able to close that down. Right, very quickly. I think I've explained it hopefully quite well already. And it's about how do we initiate such a system and what we might do and how we might score things. So we're kind of saying, well, if your score comes out at 6.6, for example, you're 60% there. If you score 10 out of 10, you're right on there. If you score 13 out of 10, you're energy positive, 130%. So we'd like to see building stock in Guernsey across the board achieve an average of 100% zero energy building status by 2035. Well, I started this idea in 2020, so it might be 2037 because I think it will take 15 years to get there, and we're 2 years behind. So the assessment might be triggered under some new building regulations in the future, and an assessor would provide results directly to the building owner. But this could be, the results could be uploaded to something like Digimap, so everybody can see the energy status of every building on the island, which would be quite fun, I think. I think you'd have a sort of envy system then where people go, oh, he scores 10 or he scores 9, I better score some more. I better put some more panels on, you know, that kind of thing. So this is more for the digital people. So if there's any digital people out there in here or listening to this, I'd love to meet up with you to talk a little bit about this in more detail, because at the moment this would get pretty, we might get bogged down in this, so I'm going to move on from that. But what I will just show you, including the benefit, you know, there's all those wonderful benefits that we can have. This is a ZEB score, okay? And it's based on somebody with consumption of 10,000 units, and they're producing 8,500 units. So that score just worked out very easily at 8.5. So they're doing quite well. And you can see that the running costs, you can see what the cost worth of that is, and you can see what their running costs are. And so their ultimate running costs are just £200 a year. But we'll just point out that this excludes standing charges, and it's based on today's tariffs. So, but we don't really talk about standing charges because they're kind of there, and we need them to help pay for the infrastructure and Guernsey electricity. But the interesting thing is here, these people probably got a heat pump, okay, and the same, say the same building, this lot's got electric boiler, okay. So they're still producing the same amount of power, and the cost is the same, production's the same, but their score is 3.4, and the running cost is quite high because the cost of electricity is quite high, and that's even on the cheap rate. And that's where there's a disparity as well. You have a cheap rate, something like, you know, 8.5 pence for an electric boiler, but a high rate of 13 pence for a heat pump. That doesn't make any sense. So there's a bit of a disparity in the way the running costs work at the moment. So that's why I kind of say that running costs, yes, they are important, and cost of energy is important, but actually it's not until you look at the energy comparisons that you really understand where you're going with this. And so this person who's got electric boiler puts in 15 kilowatts instead. His score does go up, but his running costs are still quite high. And then as you go on, this one here has got a big 15 kilowatt PV system, producing a lot, and running cost is very low. So their score is 25 out of 5. And I think that these high scores will start to happen. People who have got a heat pump, a well-insulated home, and got room for a big PV system. And so their running costs are in the minus. And so that equals a yield, an income of £250 a quarter. And I've talked to Guernsey Electricity about this, and they're quite happy with that. Because when you think about it, somebody's producing electricity, and they get, and they're sort of selling it for, say, approximately 10 pence to Guernsey Electricity, and then Guernsey Electricity down the road sell it for, what, 21 pence. I mean, making over 100% profit. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? So why wouldn't they do it? So they're quite happy to do that. So that's how sort of running cost side of things work out. And I'm happy to field questions afterwards or at any time. We can come and have a meeting with you to talk a little bit more about this. This is based on an actual real person system. And you can see here that if I have an oil or gas boiler, they'd score -1. But if I had a heat pump, it'd be 11.3. Electric boiler, it's 5.5. In some cases, it's quite difficult to get off oil and gas. But we think long term, in the next 15 years, it should be possible to get everybody off one way or another using different technologies. So what else can we do? Lots of different things. We can create political policy and understand how well we're doing at it, for one of them. You might think of lots of other things beyond what we're thinking. There's lots of different ideas we could have here. So what we're saying, though, is big data is going to be changing the face of renewables and of the planet. And the rise of renewables will not be possible without digital people. I think that's a very important take home. And this all leads ultimately to the democratization of energy and the further democratization of the grid itself. So I think I've talked enough about data for a moment. And just want to show you something very quickly. I've explained that to you, but on this computer over here, we have, in theory, the computer always says no when you don't want it to. Yeah, so if we look at this little job here, that one is that one there, and this is the data that it's producing right now today. And you can see the graph. And we can see what the production is with these blue lines here and what the use is with those orange lines there. So with this, we can see that this guy is exporting quite a lot. And you can also see he's probably already started to try and do his peak, his washing of his clothes and stuff when there's excess energy. So again, you can collate lots of data with that. You can look at the full system to go back over time and all sorts of things. So that's like really useful. So I won't go into all those other little jobs there, but we've got a lot of that stuff out there. At the end of the day, today the utility is dead. But long live the grid operator, because we need people like Guernsey Electricity to put our energy out there, to sell it and to buy it back. So without the grid, we don't go anywhere. So we need a grid operator, and we need Guernsey Electricity to be alive and well and not taken out by anybody. And ultimately, this leads to a grid as a service and the democratization of energy in the grid and radical solutions for radical problems. So Jack,
That's me. So I'm Jack, co-founder of Renew Guernsey. And I'm just going to talk about sort of the big reasons why we should do this stuff. And the United Nations said last year that humanity is in code red. Their report last year said that their sternest warning yet that the planet is on track to hit 1.5 degrees in just over a decade. And we're well on our way to exceeding a 2 degrees warming during this century. And this is all going to happen if there's not a rapid, sustained reduction in carbon emissions. And then there was another report recently, last month. And basically the report said things are way worse than we thought. And then also that the small window is closing fast. And then last weekend, there was some further data that temperatures in Antarctica reached record levels at the weekend, an astonishing 40 Celsius above normal. And at the same time, the North Pole showed signs of melting, with some temperatures 30 Celsius above normal. So this is a rapid rise in temperatures at the poles, and that's a warning of a disruption in Earth's climate systems. So that's really worrying stuff. And the world has rapidly changed in the last 4 weeks. It's crazy. And this landed in my inbox. We go to the slide. This landed in my inbox last night. And I'll just read this here. Energy and commodities lie at the dark heart of Putin's regime. Over the past 2 decades of his rule, 4 trillion of oil and gas exports have paid for the tanks, guns, and Grad missiles now killing Ukrainians. So this is why the war adds urgency to the creation of an energy system which depends more on sun, wind, and nuclear than on derricks and rigs. I disagree with the nuclear part, and we can have that discussion afterwards. But the world has rapidly changed in the last 4 weeks. So there's lots of reasons why we need to transition to renewables. But as the IPCC says, this opportunity for action will only last for the rest of this decade. So we've really got to get a move on. So climate change is now an emergency that requires actions at emergency speed. But also what they do say is that, we can act in time and we can avert the worst impacts. So that's good news, I think, and I'm optimistic. But it does mean that we need to mobilize every single tool in our toolbox. And so decentralized energy systems, i.e., micro renewables, solar PV, heat pumps, they have a massive part to play to help in fighting climate change. So on-island renewables can further assist Europe in decarbonisation by supplanting all those fossil fuels that are still in use. Europe and the world have got a long road ahead to decarbonise, so we have to do it all. That's renewables, big and also on the micro level. So it's about generating energy at point of use as much as possible, especially if we have this huge decarbonisation challenge ahead. So things like, states' properties being solarised, states' housing, schools, hospitals, our homes can be deployed, micro renewables can be deployed at efficient speed to help assist in decarbonisation. Energy security. So as I talked about before, the world has profoundly changed in the last 4 weeks, and it's certainly pushed a move on with the energy transition. And the war in Ukraine further highlights how the global addiction to fossil fuels affects our energy security, how the global economy is at the mercy of geopolitics and dangerous entities. But all jurisdictions across the world need to head for energy independence, or energy independence as much as possible, and energy interdependence as well. And this can end global instability once and for all, and ends the instability that comes with the volatility of fossil fuels, because fossil fuels have been volatile, and things that happen in the world affect the price. And that's happened many times over the last few decades. So with an energy crisis that only threatens to get worse, zero energy buildings utilising heat pumps and PV can protect islanders from the energy crisis. We also see homes achieve extremely low running costs, and that's pretty much forever. Imagine if we no longer relied on oil, gas, and electricity from somewhere else, and instead we used energy that's here. And the benefits, I think, would be profound. So energy democracy, I think, can be a powerful tool for empowering our local community. And so it's all about deconcentrating the power of large, faraway energy conglomerates, and it's about allowing it to devolve to the people of the island. It's about keeping islanders' money here, essentially, and not sending it somewhere else. And that's going to provide huge economic benefits. So energy democracy is essentially all about energy community and participating in energy generation, because a self-generator can be simultaneously a producer and a consumer, but also contributing excess energy to the grid. And so the results of this benefits all corners of our local community and economy. And it's about empowering our community. We'll see a huge cultural change in energy and approach to energy, and a massive boost to the economy. So it's of legitimate self-interest that we utilise decentralised power generation right away. And so, you know, I go into people's homes every day and try to help them reduce their energy costs or take more control of their energy. And when I'm talking to islanders, there's, you know, all sorts of reasons, you know, return on investment, they want to get off fossil fuels because it's volatile, but also, you know, a lot of customers that we go and see, they just want to do their bit and help fight climate change. And, you know, this uptake in solar PV in Guernsey is just part of what is a major global trend in a shift towards decarbonisation. And it's getting busy out there. More and more islanders are putting in heat pumps and PV. And we're now at the point as a business that we need more people. We need more people to join us, but we also need more engineers in the islands. We need more companies to start up for this energy transition. And also a really, really important thing is that we need highly skilled, trained people to help us with this energy transition. And so something like a renewable energy training school at the College of FE perhaps would be a way to achieve that. But ultimately, just what I wanted to really say is, you know, decentralized energy systems and democratization of energy allows power to the people, and the Guernsey people need to be at the center of this energy transition. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Jack. So I pertain to the grid as a service before, and often we now talk to our customers about the electricity cloud. They generate electricity, it goes into their home, it goes into their electric system, and it goes out to the grid, and it comes back in from the grid. And you don't really know where that energy is going. It's a bit like the internet. And I'm just going to quickly go through some data-driven stuff again, using these Internet of Things devices. So if we can collect information from across the grid and the Guernsey electricity network, they can then work out what is the hell they're doing, because at the moment they don't know. They've got to, they do some calculations and they go, well, yeah, you can have a heat pump and you can't have an electric boiler, we think. But they just say categorically yes or no to different things. But what they'd love to have is the information to be able to see and view what's going on. And so using data and having sensors everywhere, we can do that. And this just shows, you know, the complexity of it, building where you've got lots of different types of buildings with different types of renewable energy systems going on. Possibly some greenhouses. In fact, we're doing a greenhouse in a few weeks' time, which will be pretty cool. Industry, hotels, guest houses, the whole works. They all need some. But from this, you can see we can monitor power flows and changes, and then we can use AI to analyze things so that we can do better. So this is known as distributed energy resources. Or no wires investments. So ultimately, you'll be able to look at your app if you want and go, I can see what I'm generating, I can see what I'm using, and then you can make decisions about whether you need to put some more panels in, or you put a, insulation in your loft, all different sorts of things like that. But it gives you the power to control and to monitor. So the future of Guernsey electricity, we are pushing this idea, this concept as a grid as a service. So the grid is owned by the people, Guernsey electricity is owned by the people, and it's for the people. And so the grid is acting as a service for the people. And that's why I said before the utility is dead, because it's no longer about big utilities doing things. It's about lots of small people and large people, but they're all producing energy, selling energy and buying energy rather than being a utility as such. So just to explain this in a little bit more detail, I think we're going to end by 5 to 1, and then we'll have like 5 or 10 minutes of questions. You can stay as long as you want, but I'm sure people want to get back to there after lunch. But from here, you can see what we're doing here through cable link via Jersey is drawing in a maximum of 60 megawatts when we need all that power, when it gets very cold particularly. When we don't need so much power, we might be drawing in 40 megawatts or 30 megawatts. If we draw in more than 60 megawatts, then our power station has to go on and create smoke at this end. But when we're drawing all that energy from there, we're taking that renewable energy away from European power stations. And this is a very controversial thing that I'm going to go through here, but it's actually true. So we have our idea of our zero energy building. So this one's got an oil boiler, it scores -1. So we're still drawing 60 megawatts from the grid. And then this guy goes, right, and puts some solar panels in, which is a great thing to do, yes. So, but he's still scoring -1 because he can't offset his own energy. He's using oil. But the interesting thing is that we're then, if everybody did it, or quite a few people did it, we'd be generating, say, 1 megawatt. Well, that 1 megawatt then goes to help reduce the amount of smoke coming out of that power station. Because then the renewable energy on the grid is helping to offset that power. But then if we do something else, you notice that cloud's getting a bit smaller on the right. It's got a bit smaller. So we put some more panels on and put electric boiler in. Okay, but we're still 59 megawatts and 1 megawatt because our score is only 2 out of 10. And we put an electric boiler in. The thing is about electric boilers, they use a considerable amount of energy. So we haven't actually helped that much. But if we go to the next one here, what's happened here is that he's put in more panels and a heat pump. And so if everybody does that, then we're drawing, say, only 30 megawatts from the continent. That means there's 30 megawatts available for the Eurogrid, and that smoke gets smaller. So we're actually helping to reverse climate change by installing solar panels here on our homes because we are connected to the cable link. So with this one, it gets pretty interesting. This is in 15 years' time. Everybody's got electric vehicles or maybe hydrogen vehicles. Everybody's got heat pumps or maybe hydrogen boilers, lots of solar panels, a little bit extra over a carport maybe. And now we're not drawing any energy from the continent. And now there's 60 megawatts available from those wind turbines to switch off that power station, if it was a 60 megawatt power station. And the other really, really interesting thing to understand is that the return on investment for your investment to you and to your government is typically 6 to 7%. And the larger the project, the better return. I mean, sometimes we see 10% or 12%, especially when you take out a gas boiler and you put in a heat pump plus PV, you might get a 15% or 20% return even. So the larger the project gets, the bigger, yeah. So, but running costs, as running costs rise, your return on your investment rises also. Now, there could be the day where running costs start to go down. I sincerely think they will. Just to broaden it out into the macro, and just to look at a little bit at offshore energy and take more of a global view. Here's a concept where we're not drawing any energy from the continent because we've got a zero energy island, but we've installed tidal turbines and wind turbines within our territorial waters. And we might be generating anything from 2 gigawatt to 10 gigawatt. That's going into the Eurogrid, and one day what is known as the world grid will arise, so we can contribute to the world grid. So every watt that we generate here is another watt for the world, absolutely and completely. And the idea here is joining Sark and Alderney together to produce power so that we can gather that energy from here, chuck it into there, put it out to there, do the same to there, because together the bailiwick is stronger. If we try to do it on our own, we don't have access to that Sark energy or that Alderney energy. And if Alderney or Sark try and do it on their own, then they're not as big as we are, together. So we can be more powerful by doing it all together. And just to end on a couple of slides, other people working on the world grid, I'm not going to build it, somebody else is. But, connections across the whole of Europe, Asia, and North America. So one day when there's democracy in Russia, this will happen. And it's quite an interesting slide because it's looking at it from the top of the world and saying, what's down there? Africa down there, and South America there. So the whole world being connected together with some kind of power internet. So every watt we generate is a watt for the world. So we are changing climate change from the front line. Just want to run through this very quickly. Dark age mentality, this is the world. Uses fossil fuels, nuclear, schools -1. And then we go all electric, still using some fossil fuels, but we're starting to get there. And then one day we are 100% electric and 100% renewable powered. But we've forgotten something. And if we produce more than we need, then the future looks bright, but we have forgotten something. And it's that we also have to raise everyone out of poverty. And we also have to repair the earth because we've shot plastics in it and all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff into the oceans and in the seas and the atmosphere. And we have to repair it. So that's going to take energy. So we're going to need far more energy than we ever thought. And so the people in Africa, you can't go, oh, well, poor Africans, they can live in their huts for the next 20 years. No, they're going to want nice homes, swimming pools, internet. They're going to want the same as us. Why shouldn't they? So as we raise people out of poverty, and they've got the ability to do it right from the first place, which is actually starting to happen in these areas where renewables are actually helping people right now out of poverty. And we don't want to have to switch the dark machines back on. So what we need to do from the very beginning is to overclock our energy production. We need to think about that now, not in 15 years' time when it's too late. So we can renew the earth into the future. The planet is saved. And then fusion comes online, assisted by renewables, because fusion energy needs energy to start up. So it would be a bit silly to use oil and coal to do that, wouldn't it? So we use renewables to actually start up fusion. And then where do we go from there? Who knows? And so returning to the zero energy buildings and what's next, we need coders, developers, engineers, financiers with a shared passion for solving the world's problems. As Jack said, we need more people even today. And certainly, by this time next year, there'll be many of us working away. But from a digital point of view, every bit of code entwined into renewable energy solutions and every pound invested is an investment into elevating those who are uneducated, in poverty, restricted by the lack of upward mobility, whether here or in far off places. It's an investment and a codified effort to tackle and solve the climate change issue with code and to eradicate pollution from our seas and our lands. And by doing that, we have a superabundance of renewable energy to enable a super economy and a freer, more egalitarian society. And this will happen if we're not running around trying to earn $1 or £1 to keep warm, to obtain food, keep shelter. We have more time to think creatively and work towards a unified, uplifted, and actualized humanity. And by conserving our energy and generating our own energy, we do several things. And one of those is to reduce our long-term running costs forever, and the other one to negate these demagogic countries, of which there are just too many. and those utilities that only exist upon the earnings of oil and gas and the pound notes we give to them. And so we push back on that control they have over our lives. Altogether, that's good for our economy. That's good for us here in Guernsey. It's good for mankind. It's good for the planet. Thank you.
So I'm conscious of the time, everyone, but we've had some amazing insights, some amazing facts, amazing data, and we've heard about how to act. What we'd like to do is open the floor for some questions, and then perhaps Jack and Paul, we're going to come to the front so you can pick up those questions. But they don't just have to be questions; they could be discussion points and the like. So there's a lot to be taken in there. The guys are going to share that presentation with you all if you want it. And I'm certainly going to be taking up a copy of that as well. So do we have any questions right now to the guys?
Questions or thoughts?
Or thoughts? Chris?
We've been about our great tidal resources for 20 to 30 years now. Why do you think that nothing's been done to exploit those?
Well, I think actually the really honest answer is that the technology is just starting to get good. And one of the hardest things to do is actually to deploy big metal things in the sea, which rot it very easily. So there's a combination of different things. And I think actually digital technology is one of those things that's enabled, for example, the big offshore wind turbines we're seeing, which are now going to get like 14 megawatts now, but by next year or the year afterwards, there'll be 20 megawatt machines. And when we talk about putting machines off the end of, at the edge of our extremities in territorial waters, I'm kind of looking at the northwest of the islands, and I've spoken to people like Guernsey Electric, General Electric, for example, and other GE who produce these turbines. And it's the sort of thing that if you went, yeah, can we have a 1 gigawatt wind farm, within the next 3 years, it's possible. So it's just really then it's getting people to invest in it and having a cable link from here to France. But getting back to the tidal, I think the wind turbines, each one that was ever made, from the very smallest ones where all these started, especially in the Scandinavian countries, each one that was made improved upon the previous one. And then today with digital technology, it's much easier to create really nice, strong, robust wind machines. And now it's just beginning to happen with the tidal technology. And I won't go back to the slides there, but there's a number of smaller machines coming on the market now as well, which people are actively, promoting to get deployed. And what we'd like to do is to work with Guernsey Electricity to bring in some small tidal machines as a kind of a test case and see how they work, plug them into the grid, and then see which one is best, and then ultimately raise some money to, and we're talking billions here, to get some money investments into doing larger scale tidal turbines, which by the time we kind of go, yeah, we want that, in 5 years' time, there'll be a lot of really, really good wind turbines around. I don't know if that answers your question, but
the lady with the green shirt.
Lithium, where is the supply of lithium worldwide? Do we end up in a similar position that we are in now with who produces the oil?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the good thing about lithium, and Jack might have some words to say on it, but is that places like Cornwall, for example, have got lots of lithium. So at the moment, there's a kind of move towards mining lithium from Cornwall and creating, British batteries in the United Kingdom in big gigafactories using British lithium. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some in Sark as well, but I've not asked the question of anybody yet. But this is why I wanted to explain how many other types of batteries there are around. The saltwater batteries, which is just salt water, that's completely benign. There's vanadium batteries, which use also very benign chemicals. And I think, as a business, and as every business like us in the world, we've all got the environment at our hearts, so we're not too pleased about lithium batteries in that respect. And Jack, you might have more to say.
Well,
about
no, that's exactly what I was going to say, really. I think, you know, the renewable energy industry, you know, at the heart of what it does is about, you know, doing good for the planet. And so, yes, there is a huge challenge, and there is lithium that is being sourced from places that maybe don't have good health and safety conditions. For example, they might be propping up authoritarian regimes, for example. So that is something that has to be confronted, absolutely. And so we need to do it sustainably, and we need to make sure health and safety is paramount. And so also, you know, recycling lithium is, you know, I think that's going to be really, really important as well as we transition. We want to head towards a circular economy, basically. So yeah, it's a challenge, and it's something that we've got to confront. And I think ourselves as a company, you know, we've got to confront that as well.
all we can do at the moment is ask where the lithium came from.
Yeah.
And then make a judgment on that.
The guy at the back with the green jumper.
As a follow-up to the tidal question, the State of Albany said this week that it is cheaper for them to run their power station running oil than it would be currently to generate tidal electricity. And Fablink and Atlantis are two projects that are bumbling on, but it doesn't seem like there's a massive appetite to quickly jump towards tidal and Albany. As you mentioned, that you could do a small-scale project here, which you hope that could kind of leapfrog Albany and sort of, you know, jump the powers that be into action on that.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm keen to get, say 3 machines of about 2 megawatts each running around Guernsey is because we've got a large grid for it to sink into. And so Guernsey Electricity kind of say, well, yeah, if you want to generate 2, 4, 6 megawatts, that, you know, we can use that very usefully. In places like Sark and Albany, where everybody goes, oh, they've got really high running costs, let's put tidal turbines around there. That's a lot harder, because you've got resistance by the owners, if you like, of the power stations, because they're privately owned, and then you've got, you know, the interface and the interconnectors and all that sort of thing. And if you're generating, you know, more than 10 megawatts off Albany, that's going to be a bit of a problem. Where it's really beneficial is that, you know, there's a lot of energy out there, which is more than they need, and the same goes off Guernsey, and the same goes off Sark. So that's the idea of the bailiwick grid, is to draw all those energies together, put in one big link, either into Europe or straight up into Germany or to UK, or all three. And from an economical point of view, that will help, you know, raise those 2 islands out of the issues they've got with their power problems, and it will you know, bring a lot more business into Guernsey. So that'll be good for the economy as well as good for the planet.
I can jump on that one as well before you get to the question. One of the developments that's coming is carbon pricing. At the moment, oil is artificially cheap. For us to get to net zero, the world understands that we have to put a price on that carbon. In 2026, the EU will have at its borders carbon pricing coming in. So they'll be ratified in 2023. It's not far away. So that will be a huge shift. And so when and within the scope of that legislation is fossil fuels. It's also energy, it's also steel, it's also concrete. So all of those things will.
The only thing I would say, Ron, is that the way I see it is that I think that's a really great short-term way of doing things. I think that's really good. And like, as I said before, you know, we swipe left or right, whatever it is for carbon. It's out the picture anyway. That's going to take some time, and all these pricing mechanisms will help to take it out. But eventually, the steel that we buy, all the alternatives to steel, will actually be made from renewable energy systems and devices. You know, the lorries that will be delivering that, the ships that will be, you know, transporting it will be, you know, electric powered or hydrogen powered. And it is, so it's quite a challenge, you know. And I think, you know, for Albany at the moment, it's probably a fair decision, you know, but we've got a lot more interest from Albany just recently. So I imagine there'll be a lot more solar panels going in, and then there's going to be a bit of a battle there. It's going to be a new battleground. We had a lot of, you know, early battles with Guernsey Electricity, and that's still rumbling on in the background. But in Albany and Sark, it's a real difficulty because of the private ownership.
Maybe there's some.
Kind of want to follow up from lithium actually, about sustainability and lifestyle. So obviously farming, obviously create quarries where it's destroying a lot of land in the process that goes into sourcing again. And then the carbon output that you have from that. And then the lifespan of these before. Does that all sort of like add up where the CO2 output is equal?
Well, this is where I kind of go, well, okay, so lithium's maybe not the best material to mine, but it is a material that we can mine. And so if we look at, just look at the Cornwall one rather than the other ones, because in my mind, if you kind of started afresh, you kind of go, well, if we were going to extract lithium from underneath the ground, how do we do it? And so one of the ways you would do it would be to use renewable energy to power your equipment. If you could, you might start out at 50% of it being renewable powered, and then eventually you get to it all being renewable powered. I mean, where we've got to go is 100% renewable energy powered world. Lithium at the moment is a part of that, a small part of that, because it's used in batteries absolutely everywhere. But the difficulty is that if you look at an oil-fired car compared to an electric car, you know, it's like, well, that one uses petrol, gas, or oil, whatever it is, and comes out the ground and feeds you know, people that we don't want to pay money to, and it puts pollution in the atmosphere. And then you go lithium, on the other hand, which can be you know, extracted using renewable energy electricity. You can go into a renewable energy powered car. It's kind of a no-brainer, but we have to, you know, treat the earth nicely. We don't want to pollute the earth at the same time. That's me saying that here. Well, I'm not in charge of the lithium mines, am I?
With like electric vehicles and having a lithium battery,
Yeah.
the weight that car increases by this battery or
Yeah.
then creates a lot more flat, which then also gets released, which is just as
Well, I think that there's a lot of stuff around like this, and I think maybe Jack can answer this better than.
Yeah, I mean, the tread of tyres is quite an interesting one. And so from what I understand, treads of tyres do cause pollution. So that's an issue that's being looked into. I know that there's technology that's being developed to capture it. And so these are all sorts of things that yes, we need to work on. But I think it's you know, we have to get off oil and gas. We have to head for a sustainable future. We need a circular economy, you know, actually maybe a resource-based economy is probably the way that we need to go. These things are actually quite complex, and I think that we just need to stop digging and burning stuff. And I think it's about a transition. It's about working our way towards a sustainable world.
And cars of the future, you know, might be mostly hydrogen powered. We don't know yet, because different technologies are sort of panning out in different ways. And they might have a saltwater battery in it rather than a lithium battery. And different people have got different opinions.
Why,
Chris?
the only way to get green hydrogen at the moment is through electrolysis. You're having to use electricity to do the electrolysis.
Yeah.
So why not just use that electricity in the first place?
I know, that's what a lot of people say.
30% efficient to get hydrogen, which you could burn.
That's it.
Hydrogen's a battery though as well, isn't it? So
Well, yeah, it's long-term storage.
It's a huge amount more cost to get the hydrogen.
Yeah.
But if your energy is free,
Yeah, then it doesn't matter.
Energy is free,
so that's the direction.
that is a long way away.
So I agree with you. We don't, you know, it's if we allow technology to move itself, you know, the best man or the best battery will win, as it were.
Hyundai have recently given up their
Yes.
research into
Yeah.
hydrogen, so-
Yeah, I know.
And they put billions of dollars.
I know. Well, they might go back again next year. You never
So
know.
I'm sure most people here are very excited about renewable energy, and thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
I just started reading up about something slightly troubling, which is grid inertia. Which I know
Oh yeah,
nothing
that's
about.
easy.
And
Go on.
from my layman's takeaway, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
if you have too many renewables in the network, you
Yeah.
don't have enough
No.
grid inertia.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, what state is the grid in and how much renewable
Yeah.
energy we have on island before grid inertia is a problem.
Yeah. So storage is really, really important in this. And the thing about grid inertia is grid inertia only exists because of old-fashioned generators, because they used to spin and they take a long time to spin up and a long time to spin down. And so they use them to kind of control the frequency on the network. It is true to say that then today you've got to use different methods. So this is what the grid as a service is all about. The grid as a service is about providing a service to the grid to keep it stable. And the way that we keep it stable and we keep it robust is by having as much storage and solar across the whole network. So rather than sort of going, oh, we can't have any of that, we just put as much as we can. And then you do need, absolutely, to be able to monitor that electricity and to be able to control things so that if the sun suddenly dips down and you've got a lack of energy, you've got to switch a supercapacitor battery storage back up to keep that grid stable. And also by having sort of maybe many microgrids, rather than frowning on microgrids, we might have many microgrids where you might have a hospital or the police station might be in itself a little mini grid, or a nano grid as we call it. And that, so if there's a problem, for example, if there's a power cut somewhere, critical infrastructure has got power still, for example. But at the same time, that critical infrastructure, having those systems built within them, connected to the grid, is helping the grid stay stable and maintained. So whilst, yes, it potentially could be a problem, it isn't ultimately, as long as we do it properly. Okay, happy to talk about it more.
Just one that's coming up in the live stream. If government had to do one thing, what is the one thing that government can do that would be most effective?
The one thing that government should do right now today is to solarize its own operations, because that would kickstart the renewable energy industry on the islands at a micro renewable level. And then at the same time, if they did that, they would have to, as we get more and more people involved in the industry, we need training, as Jack appertained to before. We train people. In fact, one of our lovely trainees over there, and he's learning very fast, but we need more acolytes to understand this stuff, to deploy it, to put it out there. So one, solarize your own operations, Mr. States of Guernsey, and then provide a training centre and adopt zero energy buildings in your building regulations. Yes.
Have you seen a reduction over the years in costs of, say, average family home? Do you give us an indication of what that would do?
I mean running costs, you mean?
No, actually, sorry, installation costs of it.
Oh, the installation costs, yeah. So I think the way to put it is that if you kind of, like the first system I put in about in year 2000, so that's just over 20 years ago, was a 1 kilowatt system. And it probably cost about £10,000. Whereas now, you get to the point where a 10 kilowatt system might cost £10,000. So the cost of the panels have gone down, but the size of the outputs have gone up. And then the other sort of important aspect of this, though, is that labour has gone up considerably. And so it's actually really, so it has got a little bit cheaper, yes, but not that much cheaper because the price of labour has gone up. And if we can get more efficient, this is what we're talking. If we can digitize, if we can go digital with everything we do, so it takes less time to do, especially a lot of the back admin and all that kind of stuff. If everything's all automated, then we don't need so many engineers or so many people working in the industry. So yes, it has gone down quite considerably, in actual fact.
And as a follow-up, you don't see a time where we can actually produce anything here in terms of infrastructure, we all have to really.
Yeah, no, what we're talking about, I probably actually didn't say right at the very beginning because I was thinking about other things. Our ambition over the next 15 years is to see 300 megawatts of solar deployed across the whole island. That in itself supported by storage systems and also using heat pumps, not electric boilers. So the idea is that we become energy independent over the next 15 years and we become a zero energy island. And so, well, I did say actually, because in one of my slides there, I was saying, well, over the next 15 years, we won't need to bring that energy in. And that actually we have the ability to produce a lot of energy. But I'm divorcing the two slightly in the sense that we have on-island energy, which is really important because that makes you properly energy independent, because at any time that cable link could go down, at any time that oil or gas might not be available. And the same applies if you've got lots of big offshore stuff. That's fine, but it's 20 kilometers out at sea. There's no guarantee that's going to, supply you energy in the middle of the winter when you need it, in case there's some kind of issue. So energy independence is about generating all that energy for ourselves.
Any other questions? No? Well, okay, I think we should probably say a massive thank you, you guys, for putting all this together and demystifying a massive area. So a big round of applause. I've worked in new product development for many years, and I've had to become very comfortable with identifying trends and following them, so that the business I work for makes money. I've never seen such a disruptive and inevitable change on the horizon as we're seeing around energy at the moment. I'm really comfortable with trends. I work with them all the time, and this is rock solid. All this stuff is not science fiction. All this stuff is going to happen. And if Guernsey can get on board with that as early as possible, Guernsey will do better and the world will do better. I said at the beginning that government and business and individuals all will be driving this change, and it's absolutely true. You must not underestimate your agency in making a difference. All the changes we're going to get from this will lead to cleaner air, cheaper energy, better health, and better cities and living environments. So that's really good. And it's not, people get fixated on paybacks and all that kind of stuff, but we all win. When this happens, we all win. It's an energy revolution. We all need to get involved and we all need to play our part. So I think if you can help Jack and Paul with their hackathon, with their app, with what they're doing, if you can influence your businesses, your colleagues, your friends, your family, if you can make steps around your own energy conservation and generation, all of that helps. So I bid you, please do that if you can. So thank you very much, guys. And thank you all for coming.
Cheers, Mark.